All right, so we've got no wind right now. Perfect time for spraying. It's really easy. What about spraying Roundup all through the day?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, when you talk about no wind, yeah, that's the 10 minutes of the day we have here in South Dakota.
It worked out just great.
So you have 10 perfect minutes every day to spray Roundup.
Yeah,
what
you notice the camera's holding steady. We aren't fighting those gale force winds.
Right, what do you do the other 23 hours and 50 minutes? So seriously though, let's talk just a little bit about spraying Roundup and what spray nozzles you should use. So here are our main recommendations. Number one, you always want to spray your weediest fields on the calmest, nicest days and use regular flat fan nozzles. The reason why we say that is flat fan nozzles are going to give you the best overall spray coverage. And spray coverage is really a big key when you're trying to control any weed. We want to get the most possible spray on that plant, get it in as quickly as possible, and get that weed under control. And the flat fan nozzles are going to do the best overall job for you. But here's the thing, a lot of people, and probably you included, are using turbo T-jets or air induction nozzles or something like that, drift reduction nozzles, because drift is a big issue with Roundup too. So why the difference? Why do we say you should spray your weediest fields on the calmest days with flat fan nozzles?
Well, the reason why, when you have lots of weeds, it's difficult to get herbicide and spray to penetrate down through that canopy of weeds. So when you've got lots of weeds, you want to have fine droplets, lots of pressure. You want to push down through with fine little drops and try to get on as many of those weeds as you possibly can. If you've got great big droplets coming out of a turbo T-jet nozzle and you're using a low pressure, you aren't going to have that push to get through those weeds. You're going to have big droplets hitting and splattering, and you just aren't going to get every weed covered.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's say you've got 10 weeds in the field. You know what? I don't care if I have 90% control or 95% control. I only missed one weed out there.
Or a half a weed,
Yeah,
whatever.
It doesn't really matter. But the thing is, if I've got a billion weeds out there, I'd like to get 99% control. I can't live with 90 or 95. I want to do everything I possibly can to make sure I get every last weed out there. So that's why with your cleanest fields, we would suggest you do those on the windier days. Not windy, but windier than the calm days. So when you've got to switch over to air induction nozzles or turbo T-jets, or you're going to use a drift retardant, something like that, do that where you've got very few weeds in the field. Then it's no big deal if you miss a weed here or there. But again, take your weediest fields, do those in the calm days, use regular flat fan nozzles and no drift retardant whatsoever.
Okay, we've already had one big issue come up. You say, wait a minute, you're talking about switching between tips? That's a whole lot of work. I've got one setup on my sprayer and I've got to pick one. Do I do flat fans? Do I do turbo T-jets? What do I do? And the answer is, hold on. You got the wrong setup on your sprayer, and that's the first thing that needs to get fixed. What I'm talking about is you need to have a triple nozzle body or a nozzle body that can hold 4 or 5 tips, potentially, depending on what you're doing on your farm, but at least something that holds 3. Now, what I'm talking about, there are some nozzle bodies that you can just with one quick turn switch from one nozzle to the next. So you're out on a calm morning like this, you're spraying with flat fans, you're getting great coverage, you're doing a great job on the weeds, but all of a sudden it starts to get a little bit windier and you've got 5 mile an hour, maybe 10 mile an hour winds, and you say, okay, it's windy enough I have to be concerned about drift, but not so windy that I can't spray. So what do? All you do is get out of that sprayer, walk around behind, walk down the spray boom, click, 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 all the way down the boom. It takes 5 minutes. All of a sudden now you have turbo T-jets. You've got bigger droplets and you don't have to worry near as much about drift.
Well, I can just remember when I was a kid and, you know, any job we had, we'd always want to do it the simplest, easiest way, and that was great. And then Dad would come along and he'd say, you know what? The simplest, easiest way is not always the way that's going to make you the most money. You got to do things sometimes that are going to require just a little more effort, just a little more work, and especially a little more pre-planning.
And the big key here is some pre-planning. You have to think about this ahead of time. If you're going to spray next week, you've got plenty of time to get this done. Just go to a spray parts dealer, get your triple nozzle body, get your nozzles set up the way you need to, and you'll be ready to go when the time comes. Now, that covers you for Roundup, but there's a lot of other products other than Roundup out there we're going to be spraying.
Take Liberty, for example. A lot of people think of Roundup and Liberty as, you know, about the same type of thing, but they're really different in how they kill. Roundup is very systemic. It can move up and down in the plant real easily. Liberty does not move very well, so spray coverage is a lot more important with Liberty. The other thing is Liberty does not have as much issue with drift as Roundup does. does. So we want to run a little higher spray pressure, definitely more water when you're spraying Liberty, maybe 15 gallons of water instead of 5 or 10 like you might do with Roundup. So you're going to do something different. So here again, it comes down to pre-planning. If you know you've got some Liberty acres on your farm and some Roundup acres, you got to be ready to go both ways at any point, because you never know what's exactly going to happen with the weather. I can just tell you on our farm, we don't just say, okay, we planted these fields first, we're going to spray these fields first and just move on down the list. We're looking at our fields. We're going to spray those weediest fields on the calmest days with the best conditions, so we don't have to worry so much about drift. We can use the right spray nozzle to get the best coverage for everything. And then the other factor you've got is, let's say there's a cornfield you're trying to spray, but you have beans on the north side of it. Well, you're waiting kind of for a north wind, and you don't get a north wind very often at this time of the year, so you just have to hit those days right. So again, just be ready so you can go any direction, and that triple nozzle body or maybe quad nozzle body or 5 nozzle body is really the key.
Well, and there are a lot of tank mixes that we could talk about too, but there's an infinite variety of different mixes. If you're going to put insecticide in or fungicide in or all these things, you're going to have to talk to your crop protection dealer and look at these products and say, okay, I've got coverage issues, but I've also got drift to consider too. So you've got to kind of find a fit for both of them.
And it depends a little bit on which weed you're after. We'll talk about our Weed of the Week coming up later in the show.